Hello, my name is Frank Geisler and I'm a German data platform MVP. I live in the lovely town of Lüdinghausen, which is near Münster, and I run my own company where we do consulting in Azure and in databases and Microsoft Data Platform. This is my very first SQL Bits as a speaker and as an attendee, because in the last few years it was not feasible for me to go to SQL Bits because there were some other always some other things which prevented me from going there. But now I'm here, at least virtually, and I'm very excited to do my session here. Okay, so let's start. Well, so let's get started. The thing or the topic I will talk on will be code your SSRS environment. And what we have on the agenda here, I will show you, are the following topics. First of all, I will show you how to code an Azure environment for SSRS. After we finish that, we will code a domain, we will code a client computer, we will code a report server installation, and we will deploy reporting services reports via code. After that, we will set security via code. So what I would like to show you is that everything you can do with SQL Server reporting services can be achieved by coding all the things. And all the code you see will be on GitHub or is on GitHub. You can see it on the URL you see right there in the slides. Okay, so caution, this is a session which is really code heavy, but even if you have no experience with PowerShell, you should stay because it's not so hard, and I'm trying to explain what I'm doing so you can just understand it. And on the other hand, when you're looking at the GitHub repository, I think it's really clear. One of the things I tried to achieve when coding this was to code it in a very easy readable way so it can be easily understood. As I just told you, we will just code everything regarding to reporting services installation, so everything can be automated. And we will start. I will be obviously most of the time in this PowerShell. When there are interesting things happening, I will show them to you in the either in the Azure portal, or I will show it to you on the machine itself. But we will start by just defining some variables. Let me just get them here. I will get the variables and I will just put them in here. These are all the variables we need for our script. So there is a name for the subscription, there is a name for the resource group, there is a location. I will deploy to the location West US. There is storage we will create, which with the storage name. Because it's just a demo, we will go for standard local redundant storage. For sure, we have some virtual machines which will be able to talk to each other, and for this we will need a network. Then we have to have some variables for the compute for the domain controller. We have some variables for the compute for the SQL Server, and we have some variables for the compute for the client. So this was the prerequisite. I will just clear the screen so you can see a little bit better. First of all, we have to log in to Azure. This can be achieved with the command login Azure RM account. And what I have to do is I have to put in here my Azure credentials, which are these. Oh well. And my password. And now we are logged in. What I can do is with get Azure RM subscription, I can get all the subscriptions filtered by the subscription name, and I can set an Azure RM context. What I'm doing here is I'm just selecting the subscription I will use in all the following steps. This is the same subscription which is my current subscription. So this command doesn't do anything, but if you have a lot of subscriptions, then you can change to the subscription you will use for this. Well, there are some other tenants here. This shouldn't bother us, and after we went through all these tenants, we will have our MVP sponsorship subscription as the current subscription. Okay, here we go. And I will just clear the screen again. So all the resources you have in Azure have to be inside a resource group. So we have to build a resource group, which is fairly easy. We will just do it by new Azure RM resource group. The resource group will get a resource group name, and it will get a location. These are the both variables which were defined in the bunch of variables you saw at the beginning. So I will just fire this command, and you see now we have a resource group in West US, and we can proceed with our demo. So next, what we have to have is we have to have a storage account where we can store all the hard disks and everything for our virtual machines. And this is also can be achieved to get a new storage account name. You can just use new Azure RM storage account. You give a resource group name, which obviously is a resource group we just created. You have to give a storage type, which is our storage type we created in our variables, and you have to create a location, or you have to give a location which is being given in the parameter location, because not every resource which is bound to a resource group has to be in the same location. Okay, I will just execute this here. And now we will get a new storage account. So just to get you informed in the portal, I just switch to the portal, and when I just click on renew, we see our SSRS demo. And at the moment there are no resources in it, but this will change a little bit later. So maybe, maybe the storage account will show up here. Let's have a look. No, sometimes the portal is a little bit slow. Well, let's give it some time. It will show up there shortly. So after defining our storage account, next we have to define our VNet. And the first thing, our VNet is divided in subnets. And the first thing we do here is we create a new Azure RM Virtual Network subnet configuration. This is a configuration which has a subnet name and which has a certain IP address range within our virtual network. I will just create a subnet configuration. At this moment, I have nothing changed in Azure, because the subnet configuration is something which lives on my machine at the moment. But what I will do is, when I will create this virtual network, and when I pass this subnet configuration to the virtual network, then we will then the subnet will be created. So just to give you a hint on this, if we look here, this is our subnet and this is our address space. So our address space is 10.0.0.0 and subnet mask of 24. Okay, so now the next thing we have to do is we have to create our Azure Virtual Network, which we do with this command. So what you can see here, it's new Azure RM Virtual Network. It has to have a network name, it has to have the resource group and the location again, It has to have the address prefixes, which are the address prefix for the whole network, not only the subnet, and it has to have a subnet configuration, which will pass in here through the variable subnet configuration. So there are some breaking changes coming on, but this doesn't bother us at the moment. And now Azure will create a virtual subnet for us, and this virtual subnet will be the backend of our deployment. We will deploy all our virtual machines within this virtual subnet. So let's have a look at our resource group again. I will just click on refresh, and we see there is at least there is our storage, our subnet, and our virtual network shows up as well. Okay, this is very cool. So let's move on. Next thing is we have to have some credentials. Now we are creating virtual machines, and by creating these virtual machines, we need some credentials with which we can log in. And this can be easily achieved. There are hundreds of ways to do this, but what I do always when I run in interactive mode and when I'm executing the PowerShell commands, I'm just executing the command get credential, and this just shows us a login screen, and I can just easily give some credentials here, for example, F. Geisler, and a password. So the thing is that our credentials are now saved in the variable credential, and if you just show it, you see that the username is in clear text, but the password is not in clear text. It's just encoded as a secure string. Okay, so now we have all our prerequisites that we can just build a virtual machine, and this is what we do now. The first virtual machine for our scenario we're building is a domain controller, and the domain controller will be built the following. First of all, we need IP address, and this will create a public IP address we can use to access our domain controller. In this, it will put it in our resource group, it will put it in our location, and the location method will be dynamic. So we have a dynamic public IP address. Every time we deallocate the virtual machine, the IP address will be lost, and when we restart the virtual machine, then it will get a new virtual IP address or a new public IP address. So next thing we have to have is a network adapter, and this network adapter is created via new Azure RM network interface. It will get a name, it will get a resource group name, it will get a location. With this subnet ID, we determine in which of our virtual subnets this network interface will be put in. For sure, if we have a virtual network, we can have multiple subnets, but in our case, we only have one, so there's no big selection. But what we can do here, we can put it in the subnet it belongs to, and this will be subnet 0. And what we do as well, we bind the public IP address that we created up here, we bind it to our new network interface. So after creating our network interface, which will take a little time, we will create our virtual machine. And doing this or how you do this is you create a virtual machine configuration. And after creating this virtual machine configuration, you just send the virtual machine configuration to Azure, and it will create a virtual machine that has all these properties you defined in the virtual machine configuration. This will look like this. It's looks a little bit complicated, but it's just stacked together everything, and all the commands are piped. So the output of this command is then feed in this command, and so on until it gets to the bottom here. So the first thing we do is we create a new Azure RM config. We put in a VM name, we put in a VM size. Next thing, we are setting the operating system. For sure, we would like to do something with reporting services, and we would like to build a Windows domain. So we'll just have a Windows operating system. We will put in the computer name. We will put in the credentials. After that, we add the network interface we defined up here. We set operating system disk, which we will do here. We will set the boot diagnostics. This is a very cool thing because with boot diagnostics, you can see in the portal if your machine has some issues during startup, for example, installing some updates or whatever. And next thing we will do is we will set the RM source image. The source image for our virtual machine will define which operating system will be on there. In our case, it will be Windows Server operating system. I can show you in a minute. This will run a little bit, not too long because it's only locally. But what I can show you here is this is a configuration for our machine. We have a publisher name, which is Microsoft Windows Server. We have an offer, which is Windows Server. We have an SKU, which is in this case 2016 data center. And we have an operating system version, which we'll set to latest. And these parameters define which operating system will be on our machine. So after we created our virtual machine configuration, we just have to create a new Azure virtual machine from this with the command new Azure RMVM. We will give it a resource group name, a location, and we will give it the virtual machine configuration we just created here. And I will just start this. This will take a little while until it finishes. So I will just stop the video and be back again when it's through. Okay, now it finished. So we have a success status code of true. And when we switch to the portal, we see there is our new created domain controller. And what I can do is I can just connect to our domain controller by IP. And I can just log in here with my account and my password, which I just have to look up. And here we go. This is our virtual machine, which will be our domain controller in a short while. So the same we did for this. We have to have two other virtual machines. One virtual machine will be our SQL Server, and one virtual machine will be our client. So let's just clear this away. And the next thing we're doing is we're creating our SQL Server. It just works the same way as you've seen. So just creating our IP address, creating our network interface, and creating our virtual machine configuration, and lastly creating our virtual machine. One of the differences between the domain controller and this virtual machine is that we use a virtual machine with a pre-installed SQL Server. When we get a look here is what we are choosing is as a publisher name is Microsoft SQL Server. We are choosing SQL Offer, in this case SQL 2017 on a Windows Server 2016. We will select SKU, which will be SQL Dev, and we selected the latest operating system version. So this defines our SQL Server. Maybe you would say, well, this is easy because there is a reporting server on this, right? No, there is no reporting server installed on this SQL server, and this is something we will do afterwards, after the SQL server has been installed and has been put into the domain. Again, this takes a little time until the virtual machine shows up, so I will just pause the video. Okay, this succeeded as well. Next thing we have to do is we have to build our client machine. And it is exactly the same way. So we just create a public IP address, bind it to a network adapter. And after that, we will create our virtual machine configuration. And after we created our virtual machine configuration, we will just create our virtual machine. And here also the difference is that we are not using a server operating system. What we will do is we will use a client operating system. We will use a Windows 10. So all the same. And I will just clear this again. It's really all the same, all the same code we have here, and we build our virtual machine. Okay, I will just pause it again until it has finished. Virtual machine for our client succeeded as well. And what we can do now is we can work now on the machines. So what you can do is you can use what I will do is I will just open an RDP session and I will access the machines themselves. What you can do as well is you can use commands like ntp a session to just execute remote PowerShell commands, or what you can do as well is you can use the PowerShell virtual machine extensions to just inject some scripts into your virtual machines. I will not do any of this because I will just show you what we will do on the virtual machines. What I use here is I use a program which is called URL, which is an environment for remote desktops, and here are all our remote desktops, and I will just connect our virtual machines. Yes, I will like to connect to all of these virtual machines. There is a client, there is the domain controller, and the SQL Server. And what you can see when we switch to the portal, you will see that there are plenty of things created here, and these are all our objects we created through our PowerShell scripts. So first of all, to start, we need a domain, because we would like to have a domain in which we will use our reporting services. So what we will do is now we will install our domain controller. So let's open a PowerShell here on this machine. No results found. Okay, then we will take this one and we will just start it in an administrative mode, because what we will do is we will carry out some administrative commands. So first of all, again, I will just start with defining some variables. What I do here is I define the domain name, I define a domain ending, I define the NetBIOS name for the domain mode. If you use the domain mode win threshold, this is the last domain compatibility level, and I use a forest mode as well. And we need a safe mode administrator password, which will be the password to reset our domain or to enter our domain if our domain admin password is lost. And what you can see here is what I can do is I can just use convert to secure string to generate a secure string from my password. In a production environment in Azure, what you can do there as well is for such sensitive information, you can use the Azure Key Vault. and store your secrets in the key vault, and then fetch them from the key vault when you need them. Okay, so there is one thing I usually do, which I won't carry out in this video because this will take too long. But what I do is I will update the server. I do this by installing the module ps windows update, and then I use the command install windows update except all auto reboot, which will install all available updates, and if there is a reboot required, it will just auto reboot the server. I won't do this here because of time reasons. Next thing I will do is I will install our domain, and this can be carried out by install Windows feature. By install Windows feature, the name is AD Domain Services, and what we would like to have as well, we would like to include the management tools, because on this box we have Windows with a GUI, and so we can use the management tools as well. If you install it on a Windows machine without a GUI, a Windows Core server, you don't have to install the management tools, but what you can do is you can install the remote server administration tools, AirSat, on a Windows client, and then you can just administer your server from there. Or what you can do as well is you can do it with PowerShell for sure. So you don't need any graphical user interface. Okay, so what this is doing is just installing the Active Directory domain services on our box. And now we're finished. So next thing I will do is I will, so we just installed the binaries. We didn't do anything, so we don't have any domain or something like this. Next thing I will do is I will import the ADDS deployment, the module, the PowerShell module, so I can just start writing commands to configure our domain. Next thing I do is I install the Active Directory forest, because this is a new forest of a new domain, and I will put in all the variables you see up here. I will put in down here. I will just install it, and there are some warnings. These are exactly the same warnings you see when you do this in the graphical user interface. There are some warnings about Windows NT boxes and something like this. This is something which doesn't bother us here, because we're setting up a new domain and we don't have any Windows NT for boxes or something like this. Okay. Okay, now the domain installation is finished, and as always, when you install a domain, you just sign off of the machine and sign on again, or we have to sign on again because we have to reboot the machine to finish the domain controller process. Okay, there is a machine again, and now we have a domain controller. So we will do some tweaking and some stuff. We need for our for the next installment. We need some user accounts and stuff like this. And this is something we will do as well in PowerShell. Okay. This is our newly created domain controller. I will just shut this here down. Okay, this is our newly created domain controller, and what we can do now is I can just start Windows PowerShell, and I have to create some users. And here again, we have to have some variables. These are our variables. It's our account path. It's our report user username, which is report user. It's the user will get a password, and the user will get a description. And the next thing we will do is we will add this user via the command new AD user. And now it has created this Active Directory user. We could just show it the Windows administrative tools in Active Directory users and computers. You can just, this is our domain, and if we jump to our users, we will see there is our report user we just created. Okay, we will do the exact same way. What we need is an administrative user. I will just install it the same way or create it the same way through the new AD user command. Okay, so our domain controller is finished. And the next thing we have to do is we have to configure our SQL Server. So let's move to our SQL Server. Yes, it's okay. I will just shut this down and I will just go to Windows PowerShell again. So there are lots of variables we need here. I will just define them. We need a computer name, we need a domain name, we need an admin username, which is my user account, which is administrative user on this domain. We need a database server name, name for the report server. We need a name for the report server instance and a SQL Server version. And what we need as well is we need an encryption key and an encryption key path for our encryption key. So first of all, again, I'm not doing the, because of time reasons, I'm not doing the updates here. But what I will do, I will just add the computer to the domain. What you can do is if you put in add domain, computer name, domain name, admin user, you can just add it to the domain. There is one thing missing here. This will not work. So what I can do here is I can put in the domain, my password. So as stated, this will not work. This is because we didn't change the DNS server of our clients. So they are not able to find the domain right now. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to change our domain. If we're looking at our Azure network and we are looking at our DNS servers, then we will see that the standard DNS servers are used. And this is not okay because it doesn't use the DNS server of our newly created domain. So what we will do now is I will change to our local Azure shell, where we or our local PowerShell, where we which we use to invoke all the Azure commands. I will just fetch the network, which could be done with get Azure RM virtual network. You have to put in the resource group name and the VNet name. Then I will define a new array of DNS servers. This is the DNS server of our domain, and this is the Google DNS server for other DNS queries. I will create a new object, and then I will just set this object within the VNet for DHCP options. So this is a DHCP option for DNS servers, which will be just created or just delivered to our clients in our network. And the next thing I will do is I will just update our Azure Virtual Network. So after doing this, I will when we now look at our network and our DNS servers, you see that now these two DNS servers are entered here. So next thing we have to do is we have to restart the these machines with restart computer, so that the machine will just this is the Windows 10 machine with the out-of-box experience. We just accept everything, and what we have to do here as well, so the machine can find the domain, is we have to restart the machine as well. So just jump here to PowerShell, Windows PowerShell, and execute it as an administrator. And I will just put in restart restart computer as well. Okay, let's have a look as our SQL Server is back again. There it is. And now we can start to put it. I will just close this here down. Don't need it. And now we can start to put our computer into our domain. So just let's let's do it the same way we did. We just put in our variables, and then next thing we do is we do our add computer. So I have to, there are my credentials again. I just have to put in my password. Yeah, and now we joined the machine to our domain. This was it joined the domain and then it restarted. Oh, there it is. And now let's just move over to PowerShell again. Okay. Next thing we will do, so the interesting part is how can we install reporting services on this machine. There are several options to do this. One could be we could just download an ISO image and then do an unattended install where we have a special script which only has reporting services as an installed option. The other thing what we can use is we can use Chocolatey. Chocolatey is a very cool packet manager, which we can use to install packages. So you can find, if you go to chocolatey.org, this is where you find all the packages and all the commands for this packet manager. What you see here, this is an error which is brought up because there is not the right SSL TSL encryption in place here. So what we do now, we just enable TSL 11 TSL 12, and after doing this we can then install Chocolatey. So this takes a little while, and after that we have Chocolatey on our machine. And what we can do now, I will just clear this a little bit. What we can do now is we can now install some software with Chocolatey, which is really cool. The command is just choco install and then the package name. In this case, I'm installing Google Chrome. Okay, it succeeded, and you see there is Google Chrome. And the next thing I will install the SQL Server reporting services. Choco install SSRS, and off we go. Okay, this is an error that there is a problem with the checksum. What we can do here now is for our demo, we have to usually we have to have a little investigation of this, what's wrong, but in our demo I will just put in ignore checksums. just to install the package on our machine. Okay, now reporting services has been installed, but well, what has happened is only the binaries have been put on my machine. So what we have to do now is we have to configure them. So just let me clear the screen, and now let's configure reporting services. There is a very good tool out there, or a very good PowerShell module, which can help you a lot configuring reporting services, and this module is called Reporting Services Tools. I will just install it here, and after the module has been installed, we can use PowerShell commandlets to administer reporting services. Yes, I would like to install that. Another module I will install as well is the module for SQL Server. Same thing, install module, SQL Server. Okay, here we go. Now the SQL Server module has been installed as well. And now we can start to configure reporting services. So next thing we do is we have to set the report server database. We do this by invoking the command set report SSRS database. We give it a database server name, the name of the report server, the report server instance, the database credential type, in this case service account, and the report server version, which will be SQL Server 2017. I will go for all. Now it has configured the report server database. The other thing we have to do as well is we have to define the URL reservation, right? For on which URL the SQL server will or the reporting server will be accessible. This can be done by SSRS URL reservation. Okay, this is done as well. Next thing we have to do is we have to open our firewall on the port 80, because this is where our SQL Server reporting services server will listen. And sometimes all the configuration we did doesn't work right away. So what we can do as well is we can just restart our reporting server. So next thing we have to do, or something which is in my script as well, which is a cool thing, is whenever you are you're building a report server, the report server database is encrypted, and one of the big things to do is to export the encryption key, which is not done so frequently to my experience. And what we can do is there is also a command for backupping the encryption key, which is backup RS encryption key, then the report server instant, a password, a key path where we store our encryption key, and the SQL Server version. Okay, now our encryption key has been backupped. Just let me check where the path is. It's on users documents. So when I just go to users or to my user account and to documents, there is my exported reporting services key. So now our report server is ready, but I think what you would like to do is you would like to see a report server. So I will just open Google Chrome here, and I will go to HTTP, and then SQL reports, and we see this is our report server. This is our SQL Server reporting services server we installed via PowerShell. Okay, so what I would like to show you now is how to manage your SQL Server via PowerShell, so or a reporting server. So what I will do is I will fill in some variables here, and next thing I will do is I will show you the commands that are in our module. And what you can see, there are many commands you can use to manage our reporting server, and there are even some commands for the Power BI report server. You can see here. So what we will do now is we will just publish some reports. I don't have any reports on this machine, so I will just invoke a web request and will download some reports. Oh well, this error again. Just let me fix this. I will just fix this by this, and then I will just go for invoke web request. I'm just downloading some sample reports from what I did here is I just downloaded some sample reports from the Tiger toolbox, some performance SQL Server reports, just to have some reports. We don't do anything with them, but next thing, this was a zip file. Next thing I have to do is I have to unzip this, and now I will we need a SQL procedure, a stored procedure, which is used for these reports, and I will just install it to our SQL Server. Now, these are all the prerequisites we did, and what we can do now is we can just build a new reporting services folder on our report server. Just let's check if it did this. We go to localhost. So this is the reports, the report folder we just created with our PowerShell command. Next thing we will do is we will upload our reports to this folder. There is a command which is called write rs folder content. What we can give it is the report server URI. We can give it a path, and we can give it a destination, which will be our newly created report folder. And the interesting thing here is it will just write the whole content. There are some reports in there, and all these reports will be published now from this command. Yeah, there are some error messages or some warnings as well. So just getting back here, and when I just enter, you see there are a bunch of reports which are all published by my command. Next thing is, for sure we could do this via our browser, but what we can do as well is we can do this with PowerShell as well. So these are all the reports we published on our reporting server. Next thing is what we can do as well is we can deploy a single item. This is, I will just create a new folder on my report server, and then I will just put one single item via the command write rs catalog item, which will write only one item. I'm giving the report server URI. I'm giving the path of one single report, and I give the destination folder. I will just put it in here, and with a verbose command, you see all things that were going on there. I can easily delete an item just by using remove. I would just, or let's just, before we do this, let's just go here and do a refresh. So yeah, refresh. So there is our single item folder, there is our single item in this. And now I have to check, do I really want to do this action? Yes, I would like to do this. And Oh, well, there was a mistake in the command. But what you can see here now, when I just refresh, the folder is empty. I can remove the folder itself by remove rs folder. I will say yes. And now when we go to home, you will see there is only our folder. The folder single item isn't there anymore. And what I can do as well is I can just update reports when there are new reports. I can do this by just write rs folder content, update the reports by giving it the parameter override. And I can do this as well. I can do this as well with a single report. When I have specific reports I would like to publish, I can use I can just use a comma separated list like this one here, and I can just publish some reports. So what I can do as well, I can administer the report item security with PowerShell. So there is a command which is called grant rs catalog item role. So what is doing, it is just assigning an identity, which in this case is our report user, a role name, in this case it's browser, to a certain path, which would be report folder name. And after it did this, I can just go in here and I can just go on manage. And when I go to security, I see there is this report user, which we just added to this report folder. So I can not only do this on a report folder, I can do this as well on a report item. So I'm just using grant rs catalog item role. It just is, it says the same structure that you have up here. So if we do this now, the grant the permissions were granted for the report user on one single item on the item database overview here. So what you can do as well is you can get all the roles which are on this server. So you see, well, there is a report user, and these are all the permissions the report user has. For sure, what I can do as well, I can revoke a permission. So with this command, I just can revoke the permission for the report user on a certain thing. No, this is on certain on a certain report. And what I can do as well is I can this was all permission handling on reporting services items. What I can do as well, I can just put other user accounts to the reporting services roles like this. Now I'm granting access to the system administrator role, and what I can do as well, I can for sure revoke such permissions as well. Okay, so this was everything I would like to show you about automating reporting services. Just let's quickly switch back to our PowerPoint slides. So what you have seen in this presentation is you can script everything. And this is nice. Scripting reporting services, for example, is nice for training environments. So you can just run the scripts in a loop. It is very nice for testing. It's nice for setting up many infrastructure environments. You just have your scripts. You just have your variables. You have to alter your variables regarding the infrastructure environment. And it is very nice for automated development for DevOps. So what you can do as well is you can just create a reporting services environment automatically, push your reports or publish your reports to this environment, check them, and then just tear the whole thing down again. And the last thing you could think about is that the script is a very good documentation for all these for the things you're doing or for all your environment you're setting up. So last thing I have to say, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this session as much as I did, and see you next year on the next BITS conference.